Back here on CBS Sports HQ, it is week 12 in the NFL. So who are you looking to claim off the waiver wire? Dave Richard and Jamey Eisenberg are here to help you get those fantasy rosters set.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. Yeah, it's a crazy week. We got a lot of injuries. We got a suspension. Jamar Chase not expected to play in week 12. And then we got all these injuries specifically at the running back position. But Dave, let's start with the quarterbacks here because you got a few big names on a bye. You got no Bo Nix. You got no Justin Herbert, no Tua Tagovailoa. Jaden Daniels still dealing with the elbow injury, but not going to play because Washington's out. So who are we looking to add? Is there one guy that stands out that you say, here we go?
Yes, and it's the guy who's been going for like the last month or so in Arizona, and it's Jacoby Brissett. I can't believe he's still available in 60% of CBS Sports leagues. People have been slow to buy in. I think after last week, him doing what he did without Marvin Harrison against the 49ers, yeah, you can buy in. To me, he's a top 10, top 5 type of fantasy quarterback given the matchup from week to week. But I think absolutely 23.4 or more fantasy points in 5 straight games. He's got Jacksonville this week, then at Tampa. Schedule gets a little bit tougher after that. But he's the top quarterback to go after. You can literally add him off the waiver wire and start him this week. I also like Bryce Young. He's going up against the same defense that Jacoby Brissett just went up against. It's the 49ers, and I think he'll have to throw a lot. You know, one of the problems with Bryce Young is that he'll go into a game and he'll only throw 25 times. The numbers won't be as good. Last week was a reminder that when he does get good passing volume, the fantasy numbers aren't bad. So as a bye week replacement at quarterback, I think he's okay, 77% available. Other quarterbacks that are out there, Jameis Winston going up against the Lions, Davis Mills going up against Buffalo, not the best matchup, but at least he's there. J.J. McCarthy, Trevor Lawrence, even Tyler Shuck, 89% available, going up against Atlanta. They've got a lot of injuries on defense, and Shuck hasn't been terrible in his 2 starts so far.
2 huge injuries at quarterback. Aaron Rodgers sounds like they're hoping he's going to play, but keep an eye on Mason Rudolph. Very good matchup for him taking on Chicago, so it could be a good 1-week replacement. And then Kirk Cousins, not the best situation, but looks like he's going to be the starter rest of the way for the Falcons with Michael Penix Jr. on IR. Let's look at the running backs here, and just got done right before we started listening to the press conference from Mike Tomlin, and he's expressing optimism for Jaylen Warren. Now, he said in terms of Warren himself, he hoped to go back into the game last week. So something to keep an eye on there because the big injury is if he's out, Kenneth Gainwell would be fantastic in the replacement role, as we saw once upon a time this season in the game in Ireland as they took on the Vikings. Over 30 PPR points in that game, came on in the game against the Bengals and had 29 PPR points. A lot of it was in the passing game. But if there is no Jaylen Warren, Kenneth Gainwell should be the #1 running back to get. However, if Warren is going to play, then you pivot to Emmanuel Wilson because the uncertainty regarding Josh Jacobs. Jacobs dealing with that knee injury. It is not considered season ending. He may even be able to play this week as well, but another situation just to monitor because Wilson did a serviceable enough job taking on the Giants this week, and he's had 3 games this season with 10 or more carries. In all 3 of those games, 11 or more PPR points, so proving that he could get the job done. So this is going to be something you have to monitor and really have to play a little bit of a guessing game with because if you think it's going to be Gainwell or Wilson as the expected starter, could be one, could be neither. You just have to sort of deal with that when you're making your free agent claims. Also keep an eye on Sean Tucker. We're hoping that Bucky Irving is going to return. Not a guarantee, though, and we saw Tucker just absolutely destroy the Bills. Keep in mind the Bills' run defense is terrible. Who he's facing this week, not so much. Taking on the Rams, they've been very good, although the last 2 weeks they have given up rushing touchdowns. First time all season that they've allowed a running back to find the end zone. But Tucker's going to have a role. I think he's going to supplant Rachaad White as the second running back in Tampa Bay. Maybe a negative for Bucky Irving moving forward. But there's also one other running back you got to keep an eye on, and that is Zonovan Knight. We do not expect Trey Benson at this moment to be activated off IR, and Amari DiMercado dealing with a high ankle sprain. Knight taking on the Jaguars. They've been basically a flex or #2 running back, the Cardinals running back group. Somebody from the group since James Conner's injury, whether it was Trey Benson in week 5, we saw Michael Carter, we saw DiMercado, we've seen Knight a couple times, 9.4 PPR points or more. They've been very successful just with getting running back production, and if Knight's going to be the featured guy, even in a tough matchup against Jacksonville, something you can pivot to. If you're looking long-term, also look at Chris Rodriguez. He's been, at least for the last 3 weeks, the go-to guy in Washington's backfield. We'll talk about Ja'Cory Crosby-Barrett in a second, but Chris Rodriguez, you should be adding him even though they're on a bye in Washington for week number 12. Let's talk about some wide receivers, Dave. It looks like there's one guy and then a bunch of maybes.
And it's another Arizona Cardinal. It's Michael Wilson, and nobody bought into Michael Wilson stepping up and putting up good numbers. He didn't put up good numbers, Jamey. He put up amazing numbers in the matchup against the 49ers, and I think he can build off of that. He should be viewed as a #2 fantasy wide receiver for 1 week, and this is contingent on Marvin Harrison not playing this week. Remember, Marvin Harrison got ruled out early last week. He had the appendectomy. We don't know if he's going to play. If he plays, this obviously brings down the expectations for Michael Wilson. I don't even know if he'd be any better than a low-end flex. But if there's no Marvin Harrison, and at this point, there's no reason to believe that there will be, you're looking at a top 20 wide receiver in full PPR. Could be outstanding. Another wide receiver who's going to get that type of opportunity, at least for 1 week, is a guy you brought up on our podcast, Jamey, Andre Yoshivas with Cincinnati. At first, I heard the name and I thought to myself, I don't know if this guy can go out and be a good wide receiver. And you know what? He's going to be at least a flex, if not a low-end number 2 wideout in PPR leagues. His past 3 times, he's had at least 7 targets, 2 this year, 1 last year, at least 13 PPR points. And what really sold me on him was looking at how the Patriots did against slot receivers. They've allowed 7 touchdowns to receivers who line up in the slot. Where does Yoshivas line up the most? It's in the slot. I think he could score. I think he could see north of 7 targets. Put those 2 things together, you're looking at a lot of fantasy points. So Yoshivas should be on your shopping list. It's a 1-week thing because when Jamar Chase comes back, his targets are going to fall off a cliff. Double check for Alec Pierce just to make sure that he's not available in your leagues too. 24% available on CBS Sports leagues. It's below our threshold, but other wide receivers you can turn to. And these are more boom-bust flex types. Christian Watson, Kayshon Boutte, Josh Downs, and then guys like Greg Dortch, Parker Washington, they could end up being decent plays for you. But really, it's all about the top of the list, Wilson, Yoshivas, and maybe Watson rest of season could be an interesting flex play. He's just already rostered in so many leagues.
Just one note on Yoshivas, he may not be in the slot with Chase not there, and so that could change where he lines up because of now having to move some guys around with the receiving core. Let's talk about some tight ends here. And again, there's one standout guy and a bunch of maybes, and the standout guy is Juwan Johnson. Look, prior to their bye week, he had his best game of the season from a yardage standpoint. It was the first game without Rashid Shaheed. He had 92 yards receiving. He's been 10.7 PPR points or more in all but 3 games this year. Now, the targets have sort of shifted a little bit. When it was Spencer Rattler, he was getting more volume. The last couple of games, not as much, but finding the end zone. I think just looking at the opportunity, no Shaheed, what Juwan Johnson has offered at a position that we know has been actually very successful, but he's been quietly one of the better ones all season. Great opportunity again once again looking at the Falcons. They actually been very good against tight ends, but I don't care. I think Johnson's more of the second wide receiver, certainly the second receiving option in this offense. So you should pivot to him and start him this week. The other guy, Dalton Schultz, has been playing very, very well. But this matchup Thursday night against the Bills is absolutely brutal. So dial back expectations. We had the same situation with Cade Otton last week. He was on fire going into the game, and the Bills just absolutely obliterate tight ends. It does not necessarily mean you have to go away from Dalton Schultz for the rest of the season. Whether it's been Davis Mills or C.J. Stroud, they've been leaning on Dalton Schultz. He's become the de facto number 2 pass catcher in this offense, and I think Schultz has definite long-term appeal. Just try not to start him if you don't have to in week number 12. And Brenton Strange, we hope to get him off IR this week. His playing the window to practice was open last week, so he's close to return. We don't have him ranked yet, but he'll probably be close to the top 15, if not in the top 12. It's a great matchup against the Cardinals. He could actually lead this team in targets. Wouldn't be surprised until Brian Thomas returns. Brenton Strange, 10-plus PPR points in the 2 games prior to getting hurt. Last year did a great job stepping up for Evan Ingram, so another tight end you could pivot to. And one guy you don't see on this list is Noah Fant. With the Jamar Chase suspension, Fant is another guy like Yoshivas that's going to get a bigger opportunity. And as we'll see, he's got 2 touchdowns in the 4 games with Joe Flacco. Could find the end zone once again. Also keep an eye on both Chigozie Okonkwo and Gunnar Helm. The Titans receiving core is absolutely obliterated. Calvin Ridley's out for the season. They're down to 2 rookies in Io Manor and DK, and it could be the tight end show taking on a Seahawks defense that's really struggled against tight ends. All right, Dave, let's play a little game called Stash or Pass. We're going to talk about some guys that either you want to keep on your roster or time to move on. And we'll start with Bo Nix, who's been really up and down as an NFL quarterback, better as a fantasy quarterback. Are we keeping him on his bye week on our rosters, or are we moving on?
I'd prefer to keep him if you need the roster spot or if you need a quarterback. Like if you only have Bo Nix and you want to pick up Brissett and you don't want to drop anybody else, you can say bye-bye to Bo Nix. But I think he's still worth rostering. I love the matchups that he has coming out of the bye week. It's the Commanders, it's the Raiders. Very favorable for him. Big question mark at running back for Denver. So I think more of the offense is going to have to flow through him. I would rather keep him.
Yep, it's funny how that Chiefs game turned a lot of people's view of Bo Nix around, and I would definitely keep him as well. Next guy we're looking at here is Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. So as I alluded to, Chris Rodriguez Jr. taking over the backfield the last 3 games. It's been very tough for Krosky-Merritt. Are we holding him during his bye week? So is he a stash or pass?
What's his nickname?
Bill.
And what do you do when you go to a restaurant after you pay the bill? You leave. You're out. Goodbye. And it's over for him. I think Chris Rodriguez is the better running back in Washington from here on out. And I hate to say it because he is fast, But outside of that speed, there's nothing that he offers Washington. Doesn't have good vision, not a great pass catcher, definitely can't pass protect. Chris Rodriguez, the better running back moving forward.
Yep, easy to move on from Krosky Merritt, which is a shame because he showed a lot of promise in the preseason and had that one big game against the Chargers, just has not done anything since that performance. All right, let's talk about Tez Johnson now, the guy that everybody was excited about, scored 2 touchdowns 3 games ago. Did not do anything last week. So what are we looking at from the standpoint of Tez Johnson? They had their bye week in there.
I think he's droppable. He can be someone you pass on and you put on the waiver wire. It's not necessarily my first choice. Depends on who else I have on my team. But if I'm not starting Tez Johnson and I can go get Michael Wilson or Andre Yoshivas or one of those tight ends you brought up, those are some good names there. I'd rather go and get them and carry them than Tez Johnson.
The only way I'm going to drop him is if Chris Godwin is active, because I don't want to buy into what Baker Mayfield did in that weather against that defense. I know he's facing a great defense in the Rams this week as well, but it's going to be in an indoor situation, so I don't think it's going to be as much of a problem for him. And I think we'll see a better Baker Mayfield, a better Tez Johnson. So if Godwin is in, I'm out on Tez Johnson. If Godwin's out, I'm going to stick with Tez Johnson as a starter in 3 receiver leagues. Let's talk about 2 Chargers guys here in Quentin Johnston and Keenan Allen. So both go into their bye weeks subpar games. The entire Chargers offense was bad in Week 11 against Jacksonville. What are we doing with Johnson? What are we doing with Keenan Allen?
I would love to use them as flex plays in Week 13 against Las Vegas, but after that, the schedule is just so bad. And that offensive line, they need to do some serious retooling, and I'm not sure if the Chargers can do that. And until Justin Herbert gets time, I don't feel good starting either one of these guys. So they are absolutely cuttable. You can move on from certainly Keenan Allen, but even Quentin Johnston. Just the fact that he's had 2 0-point games lately, that's no good. I can't trust that in fantasy.
All right, I'm going to hold Johnston because I do think that there's still an opportunity for him. The game in between the 2 zeros, he had 10 targets. So they still obviously value him and want to get him the ball. In the case of Keenan Allen, it's been 4 straight games with single digits in PPR, which is hard to fathom given what he has usually done in his career and certainly what he did the early part of the season, but just not getting the job done and kind of been phased out of this offense as a run to guess and has become more of a prominent factor. So Keenan Allen, easy to drop. In the case of Quentin Johnston, I'm going to hold him through his bye week. Hopefully things are a little bit better when they come off of their bye. All right, that'll do it for us. Make sure you check out your Fantasy Football Today podcast, wherever podcasts are found. We help you dominate your fantasy leagues like nobody else. It is the best podcast in the business. Right, Tiffany?
I would say that is exactly right. Jamey and Dave, thank you guys so much for setting the table as we go into Week 12. And you heard it straight from these guys. You want to dominate your league and earn fantasy football bragging rights, well, you can join them and the gang all throughout the rest of this season. Start or sit, waiver wire, buy or sell. We've got everything you need to win your league. Make sure to watch wherever you get your podcasts.